Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Seth Bridges, and I'm the founder and head of product at Rival IQ. I appreciate you taking time to join us today to talk about social media engagement in higher ed. You all are on mute, but I do invite you to ask questions along the way using the question panel in GoToWebinar, and we will definitely spend as much time as we need to answer questions at the end. We're also recording this session, and we will send out a link to watch the video at your leisure, to share with your team. We can also send out a link to the slides if that's interesting to you as well. I am pleased to introduce to you Jeremiah Barber. He is the digital marketing manager at Up and Up. They're an agency in South Carolina, very close to Clemson. A lot of excitement around the recent football victory. And Jeremiah today is going to be joining me to talk about some of the experience that he and Up and Up has had in working with some of their higher ed clients. And Jeremiah, pleased to have you, and take it away.
All right, thanks very much. So glad to be with you today, and I know it's an exciting time in higher ed, really. You come back from Christmas break and you're hitting the ground running in January, and maybe one of your goals for this year is higher engagement on social, and that can be a murky thing to understand. What is it? How does it work? Why can't we get it going, and where do we start? So hopefully what we provide today will just be some practical stuff, examples, and talk a little bit about the white paper that we worked on, which really looked at a bunch of Division I schools and ranked them on engagement, and we'll tell you more about that. So let's jump right in. So let's just take a look at what might be a typical conference room on a Monday morning. You've got your meeting happening, and tell me if any of these phrases or questions or statements sound familiar. Maybe someone's saying, you know what, we just need more engagement, and how can we get more shares, and why aren't our posts getting likes? Why are competitors getting so many likes? Or my personal favorite, and by favorite I mean not favorite, how can we make our posts go viral? So if anyone ever says that to you, just stop and roll, drop and roll right out of the room, and you'll be safe. I won't tell anybody. Does that sound like a familiar few phrases you might hear? It just all makes me feel like my favorite emoji, expressionless. So let's take a look at an example of something that we looked at. Now, this was a first day of class picture. So it could go with a lot of different timely things, but this was in particular a first day of class. It's a nice photo. It was beautiful. So we thought, oh, this is a nice photo from one recognizable institution, big institution that you would know the name of. And here's another one, and this was part of a first day of class post as well. Now we looked at these two as we were working with one of these schools as a client, and we said, okay, let's take a look at this photo here on the bottom right. That's the stats it had, about 700 likes, 45 shares, 18 comments. And the page, this institution's page, had over 400,000 likes on it. So there's the stats for that one. And then this post up here on the left, that first one we showed, had exponentially more engagement. Over 7,000 likes. You see those numbers and how much bigger they are than this. So we asked ourselves, because we were puzzled also by the fact that that page only had about 260,000 likes on it, why was engagement so much higher? So we asked ourselves a couple questions. Was it about time of day? Because that was posted at a different time of day. Was it about the fact that this one up on the left was a single image, as opposed to the bottom right was part of, kind of a multiple image post, and we couldn't quite figure it out. So luckily we had a connection where we were talking to the head of social for this institution that made the post on the top left that did so well. And what we found out was the answer was pretty simple. They had just thrown money at it. So there you go. End of talk. Just throw money at your posts and they'll work. Now, if only that was the answer, it would be fantastic. We know that that is not the answer. In that case, that's why it was promoted. That's why it was so engaging, because it had money behind it. But we know that's not always the case. So what can you do to boost engagement? Let me give you just a quick rundown of the sections of today, and then Seth is going to take over, talk about the methodology of the white paper, where that came from, and we'll go from there. So first off, we're going to look at the methodology, and then Seth's going to talk about as well just the opportunity that you have in higher ed for engagement because of your audience. Then Seth is going to talk about seasons and how seasons and other timely type posts can be helpful for you. I'm going to tell a story about one of our clients and how they made some small changes that led to really big increase in engagement. Then Seth's going to talk about community, connecting your community with your posts and how helpful that can be. Then I'm going to talk about just being engaging through humor and authenticity and how that can help. And then last section will be about how small schools can have big engagement. So just to show you that you don't have to be a big school to get big engagement. So I'm going to let Seth take over and just talk about the white paper and how we built that out.
Great. Thanks, Jeremiah. So as Jeremiah mentioned, about middle of last year, we decided to do a study of over 350 NCAA programs looking at the universities and their social media performance. So we got all this data together for an entire year, so mid-2015 to mid-2016, pulled together all of the data we could about their audience growth, what kinds of activity on a variety of social media channels, in addition to all 600,000 posts that were a part of this data set to try to do some analysis and see what we could learn. So I should mention that as much as I work here at Rival IQ, helping to design and develop our products, I'm a product of a lot of higher ed. I have a PhD in computer science from the University of Washington on top of my University of Pittsburgh undergraduate. And I love data. That is why I am here. And I can tell you this project had a lot of data in it and, you know, a lot of good training. So let's see what we learned. The number one thing that stood out to me was that Instagram, from an engagement rate perspective, so when we talk about engagement rates, that's the total engagement, so comments and likes that you get on your posts divided by how big of an audience do you have. This lets us compare smaller schools with larger schools. And across the board, what we see is that in higher ed, the average engagement rate on a per post basis is about 4%. You might ask, is that good or is that bad? So let me give you the comparison here, which is brands overall trend in about the 1% category. So the takeaway here, you all have a very engaged audience, and we see a similar disparity whether we look at Facebook, even Twitter, across the variety of social media channels, but on Instagram, particularly because of the nature of the platform, we see higher engagement rates on Instagram independent of industry or segment, but also because of the demographic that is one of the primary constituencies of your audience, which would be current students. Obviously, you have such a rich opportunity because your community is so much larger than just the student body, the faculty, alumni, donors, sports fans. You have an amazing opportunity to connect with a variety of different communities, and we see some of that wonderful, wonderful engagement and opportunity here from this, just this one slide. Now, this is a set of data that we put together back in June, and we've continued to keep up and look at how some of this data compares from colleges and universities around the United States with brands generally. So in this graph, that top line, looking at the entirety of 2016, month by month, Instagram engagement for colleges and universities, compared with that orange line at the bottom, everybody else. And again, you see that wide gap, north of 3.5%, 4% versus about 1%. The interesting thing for me is that if you look at the trend across the entire year, we see generally consistent and not declining engagement for colleges and universities across the entirety of the year, while in the rest of the market, we see a general average decline in Instagram engagement rates. Part of that would be growing audience, so more people, more content, fewer people are going to see that, but also heavily driven by the Instagram feed algorithm that rolled out in kind of late Q1, early Q2 of last year. So big pat on the back, but also for those of you who are not able to realize these kinds of engagement rates in the work that you're doing, you should know that there's a fantastic opportunity to be way, way better than anyone else from an industry perspective, like social media and higher ed. You guys have a real opportunity. So one of the ways that I think people can connect with their communities is to be consistently think about being relevant and topical with the time of year, with the season. So we've looked at in the past, in this particular chat that Jeremiah and I have, going back to school, talking about returning to school, using humor in there, freshman convocation, really celebrating this new class this year, the class of 2020, and how they're being welcomed into school with their traditions. More recently, I wanted to go look and see what were the things besides football that really were generating a lot of excitement on campus. And I will tell you, the number one thing that really stood out to me was, believe it or not, the celebration of snow. So obviously, our country's very big. We all have very different weather. I live in Seattle. We get very little snow. You drive an hour to the east, you're buried in snow. I think this must be the case. Certainly here, I'm showing a post where the Georgia Tech swim team was unable to swim against Virginia Tech because I believe it was snowed out. So the men's IM relay team decided to do their relay in the snow. 12 million views, tons of engagement, tons of sharing. I think Georgia Tech said this is the most viral post they've ever done. But I'd like to point out that this was user-generated content. It's not like the marketing team from Georgia Tech was like, let's figure out how to get the swim team. I mean, if someone here is from Virginia Tech, please raise your hand and tell me that. But that the team did something fantastic. And the university's social media team was smart enough to be able to pick up on that and leverage that for massive, massive reach for Georgia Tech. I feel bad for these guys in Speedos in the snow. It's not comfortable in the jacket. I really can't imagine it was comfortable as a former swimmer in a Speedo. Other examples, here's one from Clemson. This is out by Jeremiah. Why make a snowman when you can make a snow paw? I'm not a Clemson grad. I don't know all the tricks, but I can at least see that the logo and the paw, they're lining up there. Thousands and thousands of shares. These kinds of things, again, I doubt the marketing team or the social media team made the paw, but they're taking advantage of documenting what's happening on campus and sharing it to the broader community. People love this stuff. Go find some of these posts, read the comments. You'll absolutely see why people are so engaged. Oh, I remember when I was on campus in 19 whatever, we made those snow paws, or gosh, I was there, I saw some guys crash it later. Whatever it is, people get very excited and want to connect here. On average, posts about the snow. There were in the subset of data I looked, I went and looked at about 150 of the schools for just this little bit. 100 posts about snow or snowing or snow on campus, and those posts 2.5 times the average engagement on Facebook versus the normal posts that everyone is doing. And that includes the football posts and everything else. Like, it's topical, it's relevant, it's in some cases, in the Georgia Tech case, just downright funny, and it's interesting to everyone because it's silly. You can definitely make an improvement in your social media by continuing to focus on topical, relevant, timely, and documenting the world around you, particularly the funny things, because people love it. Jeremiah, let me hand back off to you to talk a little bit about some of your experience with Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, University of Kentucky, we had done a social media workshop at a Case 3. We'll actually be at Case 3 in a few weeks, so might see some of you there. Let me know if you're going to be there. Love to hang out. But UK is a client of ours. We work with the College of Pharmacy as well as admissions, and their director of marketing, Kelly Bozeman, said, "Hey, come up and do a social media workshop." So we said, "Okay, why not? Let's take a look." And that's actually how we found Rival IQ. We found Rival IQ as a tool to look at their social and help them analyze. So you would think, in big universities, there's a lot of factors that go into social media, and it doesn't mean that you're magically great at social or successful just because you're big. You might just have some small things that you could improve in order to get to that next level. So we were looking at UK in a competitive landscape of 8 schools. So they had the second largest following among these schools, but out of 8, they were almost last in engagement. And if you have met a Kentucky fan, they are not disengaged. They are not people that don't care about their school. They are a passionate bunch. They care about #BBN. This is a very plugged-in group. So what are maybe some of the things that were factors for this low engagement? This was the Twitter feed you can see there in April of last year. Just a screenshot of kind of what it looked like. I'm not sure about you, but that's not the most engaging, right? And we're okay with saying this because we've gotten better, and they were very open and said, hey, come help. There's just some simple stuff here. If you were coming to this and you said you saw this Twitter feed, what would you say would be maybe the first improvement? There's a lot of just Owly links, just from using Hootsuite and just doing what's easy, which is just let that link work. There's no pictures, there's no video, there's not a whole lot happening there. But they've got great things that you can be talking about. So what are some things that we could improve on? This was an example. This was a tweet about a really fantastic, interesting exhibit at a museum, but it was just an Owly, and there it was. But then we looked to that link, and we found images like this one. Imagine just putting that image up there. Obviously, the stats are overwhelmingly behind putting more images and videos on Twitter, leading to greater engagement. I don't have to tell you that, but it's just another reminder that you've got probably a wealth. If anything, you have more images than you know what to do with, and more great content. You just have to bring it to the forefront and use those images and use that content to your advantage. So what some of the things that we talked about? Let's just get more images and videos with our posts and use the actual video. Don't just embed YouTube links because of the data behind that and autoplay. So don't hide things. Don't hide them behind a link if you don't have to. If you've got something really engaging, pull out that picture or that image. Don't hide it. Pull it out. Don't link to a really nice image that you've created. Actually put that image in there. We talked about just engaging with students more, graduation being a huge time for that. We looked at it and we're like, look at these schools in this landscape. They're engaging with their students on a fun, authentic way, and that is going to take off. Also because your students will say, wow, that was pretty awesome. Like the official Twitter account just noticed my post and engaged with me. So take advantage of that. Just add in some more humor and authenticity, and I'll talk about this in the later section about how to do this wisely and carefully, and not just jumping in at once because there's a lot of trepidation about that. Just be a little more authentic and have some fun. You're talking to college students. The content being for your audience, not for you, and that can apply to way beyond social for any of us, especially though in higher ed where sometimes websites and things can just become news feeds for faculty. Like, it's not all about your awards, it's about the people that you're engaging with. So making it more about your audience and connecting with them. Take advantage of real world or internet events, stuff like the dress and May the 4th be with you and stuff like that, where you can engage with and jump on a trend once you've thought it through and ensure that trend is not something you want, something you don't want attached to you, being careful with it. Take advantage of those events and jump on those trends. Nothing wrong with that, for sure. And those are some of the things that we focused on there, and it really led to some great things. Go check out the UK Twitter feed now. Things like really solid videos that they created that are really engaging and are getting a lot of attention. You can't see this, but they've used more and more GIFs and just creativity and fun engagement with their audience to have fun and show their personality.
Hey, Jeremiah, a question for you when you're talking about was that a big shift for them? I mean, was it a big, did they have to triple their budget or double their staff to make those changes?
No, it was, you might be in a situation like this in that even for a school that size, the people that were running the social media accounts, that wasn't their full-time job. So if anything, they didn't even have kind of a community manager set up or someone that could be watching it all the time. It really was not a massive change for them. And what they did, and we worked with them to help build out strategies first, and we'll talk about the humor and the authenticity side more. They had to just put a little bit more time into taking that image and taking 10 seconds to save it and put it up there, making sure you have that video file, those kind of things. And what was most important, though, was that they organized themselves around how they were going to do it, and it was really clear. And that when they built in those strategies around the networks and around the tone and voice they were going to have, it gave them freedom. The irony being that some process and structure and guidelines actually give you freedom, which is really nice. So yeah, it doesn't take a huge change because nobody has a massive amount of budget to increase. So I understand that. So after about 3 months of making these changes and rolling these things out, they went, here's a little bit of the improvements that they had. So their improvement overall in engagement rate per post after about 3 months of consistently acting more like this on social, 344% improvement in engagement rate. They went up from about 40 engagements per post to almost 180. And we looked at a couple competitors, which in their case were A&M and Indiana, and we looked at those competitors' growth, and they had grown at about 50 and about 176% versus the 344% that we'd seen there in improvement in engagement rate per post for UK. So it works. It's a lot of small changes. It takes a little bit of time, but it doesn't take a complete sea change and overhaul. It's just some little things, in my least favorite cliche, some low-hanging fruit, but it is kind of a true statement that you can make small changes to get toward big improvement. So
Yes.
let's talk about community.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, we all live this. I ran our marketing team for over a year. Thank goodness now we're a little bigger. We have more marketers, and we're able to apply much more effort to what we're doing on social, to run more experiments, to be on a few more channels, and absolutely a lot of the things that you just talked about, like we see the impact. We did an experiment in December that was very focused on replacing a lot of the link sharing that we were doing on Facebook with a lot more photos and native video, and in 1 month we more than doubled our organic reach on a per post basis, so that now when we do decide to share links sometimes, we're getting dramatically more reach on those posts than we were previously. That's what you can do with a little bit more focus and a little bit of thought and strategy. So again, when I dig through the data looking at what successful universities are doing with respect to finding good engagement on social media, another place besides what I was talking about before in terms of being topical and timely and relevant with respect to the seasons, a consistent theme that I see is marketing teams, social media teams celebrating community. And community, again, not just the students. Your faculty are doing amazing things, your student athletes are doing amazing things, and your university's winning awards. Your students are doing things both on campus and off campus. And just a few examples. So Arkansas, Miss America, an Arkansas student, obviously celebrating that here. You know, several thousand likes, lots of comments, lots of engagement. Obviously, this is not a university-sponsored thing, but celebrating the fact that one of your students is out there doing big things. Again, around the Olympics, so many of our student athletes are competing for the United States or other countries as a part of the Olympic Games, taking advantage of the fact that you've got someone who is performing at the highest levels and documenting the fun, the thrill, and potentially even the victories for these people is obviously a great way to have content to share that celebrates both the community and the university at large. But of course, it doesn't have to be the Olympics. A&M, very excited to have the student leadership team for 2016 for the first time being entirely comprised of women. That's a big deal. The university thought it was a big deal, and they chose to make that a point of pride in their social media feeds. And you see here, I'm going to squint in, like 16,000 shares. Like, that's not a boosted post. That is virality. And when you find things that resonate with the community, again, I guarantee, go look at the comments in this post. It's not just the students. It's alumni. It's the broader community engaging. And this is a great way, again, to find content that will get your community excited and engaged, whether you have 1,000 students in your student body or 35,000 or 55,000. You've got a ton of amazing people living their lives, making things happen, and that should provide an endless source of things to celebrate. But while you're doing it, you can be funny sometimes. I think Jeremiah is going to tell us a little bit of how and maybe how not to do that.
Yep. Yeah, so why is it sometimes that we just don't have personality? Because your schools have personality. I think because, like this guy, you might just be going along beautifully, and then next thing you know, you're a PR nightmare, or you just botched something you didn't intend to botch, or you got associated with something that you did not intend to be associated with. And it's a little bit scary, I understand. Social media is public, and that is the nature of it. That's the built-in nature of it. So why is it that we're afraid? I think because there's definitely some risk involved. But we have to remember, like one of my favorite words of all time, non-word strategery, humor is not a strategy. So it's just a part of your overall strategy. It's a part of your tone and your voice and who you are as a school and showing your personality. Why should you be funny? I mean, because it works. It shows your school's personality. It shows who you are. Your students are going to remember those things. Your prospective students who are coming up will be glad to see that you're real people. You should just show some of who you are, because you don't want students to get on campus and be like, well, where's that personality? You've got personality. It's there, so show it, and show it on social. Just some good examples from Evangel, which is, first off, from Evangel, it's a client of ours. It's fantastic. This was during the snow, and they were just, if a private Christian school can pull off Netflix, but no chill, you sure can. They do a great job of being authentic. Butler answering the question about their biggest schools in America, with probably because they drink muscle milk, which is fantastic. I'm guessing somebody on campus got that shot and they popped that in there. This is a GIF of just this kid impatient about waiting for Jayhawks to come back to campus. That's always engaging and fun to connect, and just remind your students that you want them to be here. And thinking on your feet, really, of jumping on things like this, where Florida jumped on this conversation that Jesse Palmer started, and then hopping and taking 15 seconds to create a meme that was part of that conversation was fun. So you gotta think quick. You gotta give your people the liberty and the license to be quick and trust them, but also build it in so you can have that 5-second conversation that could save you. Be like, how is this okay? And just have that conversation first. It can be good. You can still be fast, but you can be smart. From one of my favorite movies of all time, What About Bob? How should you roll this out? Roll it out in baby steps. So in this scene, Dr. Marvin has just told him how to fix his many neuroses, and he gives him his book, Baby Steps, and he tells him just baby steps. So Bob Wiley takes him very literally and takes little tiny steps around his office, and little tiny steps out the door, and little tiny steps out the hall. Baby steps. If the personality and the humor and those kind of posts and those kind of things, if they're not what you're usually doing or not what you're regularly posting, don't do it all at once. Just ease it out there. Try it on one platform first. Test out your messaging and your ideas with current students. They'll probably have a good idea what's funny and what's not. So test it out and put it out generally and gradually. Keep an eye on what's trending, because there are lots of opportunities for you to jump on. And same kind of thing, caveat, be careful, but do your research, but keep an eye on what's trending, because you can jump on that and show that you're actually paying attention to current events. And start close to home. Evangel, again, I love this picture. Just start close to home. He's talking about taking notes at the PowerPoint and about to change with this. I love this image. It makes me laugh every time. Start close to home with college experience and things that people are experiencing. And start with that. That's safe, and that is what people will identify with. And your college, I'm sure, has inside jokes that you can play off of. I saw one that was from Cornell, and it was like a student buried in snow, and it was like a meme, like, go to Cornell, they said, it'll be fun, they said, that kind of stuff. Just play into those campus jokes and have fun with it. And pay attention to where you're trying to be funny. So there are just certain platforms where it just seems to work better. I'd say from what I've seen, Twitter, I'd say is probably number one. Instagram is the same. It's maybe like a close second on it, because you can have fun with GIFs and memes and all that kind of stuff. So I'd say Twitter and Instagram are really close. Twitter seems to work really well as well, because you can engage back and forth quickly and have some fun with those witty back and forth. Facebook, it depends on who your audience is as well. Facebook, I think, seems to have a broader audience where there may be more of like your alumni and donors and general public that might follow you on Facebook versus Twitter and Instagram. So if you don't want to spend all your time explaining your jokes, maybe don't do them on Facebook as much, because I tend to see that's where that tends to happen a little bit more. And just use your discretion on that. But think about where you're posting whenever you're trying to be funny. And I will transition into this next section. So with all of this is good, fine and good, you might be saying, okay, great, Good for Kentucky, good for Indiana, good for the big schools, easy for them because they've got tons of followers and a huge alumni base and all that. Well, you don't necessarily have to be big to get big engagement. So let's look at some examples here, and I'll explain these numbers and what they mean. So the University of Portland came in number 17 overall in the engagement report. I remember over 300 NCAA schools were ranked on engagement, which is, likes, shares, comments, things like that. They were ranked number 17 overall, but they only have 4,000 students. Presbyterian College, which is near us, 35 overall, but only about 1,000 undergrads. And then St. Mary's College of California, which we're going to look at in some more detail next, out on the West Coast, came in at 39 overall, and they only have 4,250. So you don't have to be a huge school to get huge engagement. If you do things that are smart, you can see that as well, and you can engage even more. So St. Mary's, 18,000 plus likes on Facebook, 5K Twitter followers, 4,700 Instagram followers, and their top performer was Instagram. Like you said, that is where the students are living and breathing, and they're going to be a big boost to you. Their top performer was Instagram. Now, the interesting thing is, this is a shot that was from their homepage. Now, if you take a look at their homepage and their website as it stood, it was a beautiful example of how that content strategy and that student focus just was very obvious what they were doing with their website. It was designed to help a prospective student understand what St. Mary's was. And this is the kind of thing that is connected to a larger content strategy beyond social, but social is a big part of it. This is an example of how well they were doing at creating an engaging experience on all their whole digital presence and how that connects really beautifully. But an example specifically on social was this hashtag, which St. Mary's is a Catholic university, and imagine that was an interesting conversation the first time they brought it up in the board meeting, whatever, or put this hashtag out there. But they've used it brilliantly, and you can see their engagement is huge. The connection is there. It's a natural thing for the students and alumni and those who are involved to jump on that and say, oh, that's fun. Like, I have this experience, and I'm connecting to this hashtag. And this was from their admissions homepage, where they put together a nice little simple aggregator which showed all these posts with that hashtag. And that's something that you can find that little point of resonance, whether it's a hashtag or a story or something like that, that your students and your whole audience can engage with. That can be really helpful. So you don't have to be a massive school to get huge engagement.
That's fantastic, and I love that copywriting on the homepage. I mean, thinking about you can be anything, but then really sharply contrasting that to accept not who you were. Like, you will change, and kind of helping push people that direction. I think that was just fantastic copy.
Yeah.
So we've now spent about the last half an hour looking at a variety of different examples of small changes you can make in your social media execution to improve engagement, probably grow your audience as well, and continue to keep those engagement rates high as you continue to grow. But when we wrap up, I always like to bring people back to a small set of really key things that they can do to generally improve their social and digital marketing. The first thing is always, don't just rush right in. Like, we just talked about some things. I'm going to encourage you to go download the actual report that we put together. There are a bunch of additional case studies and examples and data that you didn't even get to see here. We shared none of them, so go get the report and you'll see. But ingest, step back, strategy, then prioritize. If you do not have time to be on 17 social media channels, or 6 social media channels, or 3, don't be. Figure out where you can learn, measure, grow, be there, and then once a quarter, maybe every 6 months, step back, measure, see how you did against your strategy, and then move forward, potentially get bigger as you move on with mastery. 2, take advantage of that calendar. There are so many points in the academic year where you have an opportunity to celebrate the beginning of something, the end of something, nationwide university events, days to celebrate everything from athletic events, social events, social justice events. It was MLK Day on Monday. What were members of your community doing to celebrate the day from a volunteering or a giving perspective? These things are happening. Be out there, be documenting. It will drive fantastic engagement and give you an endless source of content. And the last point that I'll make, and it's really not anything I talked about today, but Jeremiah hit it on a bit when he was talking about, for example, getting the most out of Twitter for the University of Kentucky. And that is, you have to know your platforms and you have to know your tools. One of my favorite examples is on Facebook. Facebook really wants users that are using Facebook to stay on Facebook. So if you do nothing but post links to try to take people off of Facebook, Facebook does not really, that's not what they want. Their mission, good experience, keep people on Facebook. This is why you see things like instant articles. It makes the reading experience better and keeps people on Facebook. Native video versus sending people off to YouTube, it keeps people on Facebook. It makes their experience better. The reward for doing the things that Facebook likes is that you get a lot more reach for free, and when you do spend, and there's nothing wrong with spending, I think paid, whether it's boosting or ads, is a strong part of any social media strategy. You will get more for your money when you optimize what you're doing for the particular platform. I think Jeremiah was able to really concretely show some of the gains that they made, even from an organic perspective with the University of Kentucky, by doing the things that are best for the platform. 27 hashtags on Instagram, probably too many. 7, probably just right. On a Facebook post, please stop. Like, people aren't doing that. Know your platforms and get the most out of them. Produce the content for the platform that you're using in the way that maximizes virality and viral reach and engagement for that platform, and you will have success. So, 2 things for you. 1, as I mentioned, go download the Higher Ed Social Media Engagement Report that we put together with Jeremiah and his team at Up and Up. You can find it at upandup.agency/engage. 2nd, all of the analysis that we did for both today's presentation as well as the report was built exclusively using Rival IQ. You can go do a bunch of this analysis for yourself, see how you're performing, interact, go find your best posts, go build a landscape of all the schools in your conference, figure out who's doing well, where there are opportunities. Using Rival IQ, we have a free trial. There's no obligation. There's no credit. Just go do it. You'll be happy. I'll be happy. Everybody wins. Fantastic way to get a peek and learn something about your social media performance. So you guys have been asking some questions as we've been going along. So I want to take a few moments here. I'm going to go kind of click around and see what kind of questions we have and kind of talk through them. So I see that somebody from Georgia Tech was very excited when we put the Georgia Tech post up to say, hey, that was us. So it was a really tactical question here for you, Jeremiah. Do you know what programs you guys kind of coached Kentucky to use when they were making some of their animated GIFs? Do you know if they're a Creative Cloud shop, or are they using Canva, some more free tools?
I'm not sure, but I could definitely find out. I think they would probably be a Creative Cloud kind of shop. I know that they have designers on staff, but not very many. So and the media team's like 2, the video team. But I know that the way that they were structured, they also did some restructuring. They really sorted out who's going to handle what. So I'm not sure. I know that the Creative Cloud, which is nice, you know this at universities, but Creative Cloud in some places is available to anyone across the university. I think it's Clemson that's an example of that, where someone was telling us that anyone could have Creative Cloud. So there might be even an opportunity like that. I'm not 100% sure. I could definitely find out, though.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you certainly here we are able to do a lot. We use Keynote a lot. I mean, we're a Mac shop, but we certainly use Keynote a lot. And you think, oh, it's for making presentations, but it turns out that it's really easy to export movies, including all the nice transitions and animations that are built in. And once you've got a movie, there are 1,001 websites certainly on the internet that will take your movie and turn it into a nice animated GIF for you as well, and we definitely take advantage of that. So let's see, moving down the list. So, wow, okay, this is a great example. Somebody who's in the UK raised their hand and said, we actually switched our social team from one person to 7 people. So there's no other context, but I have a couple thoughts. One, my guess is that the team was probably like the intern or the side job of the person who was also supposed to be in charge of digital or blogging or who knows what. But there was some result that they saw that made them believe that further investment in social media was going to drive benefit, drive ROI for the university. I mean, at the end of the day, we're doing social media not to do social media, right? And not to just engage with the community. There is a higher level reason that we are all doing this. Maybe from a university perspective, it's not necessarily making money. Certainly when I think about businesses, like we do business because social has positive ROI, but it can be the same answer for the university community as well. It's just that you're looking to strengthen the community, like alone, strengthen the community. What kind of benefits do you derive from having a strong community? You potentially attract a higher quality of student. You have the ability to attract and retain high-level faculty as they graduate from their graduate programs and go on interview loops, where universities are competing for the top faculty, just like I know you all are competing for the best students. There are definitely more students than there are slots, and you have your pick. The same goes for faculty, and so certainly having a strong, engaged community in person, in real life, as well as bolstered by perhaps the sad amount of time that we spend with our devices, doesn't matter. You can be there strengthening your community. So
Yeah, and
Devin, that's really impressive. That's really, really
a word on resources too. So I was at AMA Higher Ed and went to a really good session from a school, and they had actually there with them a guy who was a senior at the university, and he talked about his experience on their social media team. So what they did was they built it, and I know a lot of colleges do this, but it's just a really great way to increase your content, increase the quality of your content and your engagement without hiring 12 new people. They built out a social media ambassador team. They had applications and a whole process for finding these people, and they had probably 5 or 6 or even more on this team, and there were students that were always looking for that great content, and then they had a way to approve it and put it through the process. That is a fantastic way to do that, because you're probably not going to be able to bring on 4 full-time community managers, but you have students who care and who love your school and who can bring an authentic, fresh take on things. So like explore that whole social media ambassador, social media team concept, and explore student-run accounts especially. If you'll keep an eye on the Up and Up blog in the next few months, I'm going to have a post from Robbie Fitzwater, who's from Clemson, is their director of content strategy, about student-run accounts, because they have a really successful student-run account and how that is so helpful and how that can really bring an authentic view, because realistically, those high school students that are looking at you versus the other schools, they are not going to engage as much with your nice, clean, beautiful, polished Instagram account, university, as much as they will then engage with the student run. And that student account is completely takeover, so that's a whole nother topic. But as far as resources, invest in your students and just let them invest in your school in that way. That can be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke with a professor from Northern Arizona University who was one of the top universities in our study,
Yeah,
and oh yeah, maybe they were the top.
Yeah.
Runs an entire course teaching students about digital marketing and social media efficacy, and they have a whole set of student-run handles that they use as a part of that class experience to be able to give real-world experience. Let the class experiment. Let the class see the outcomes that they can derive from their learning, and I think that is just a fantastic way to bring it that much closer to home for these folks. A few more questions here, so I'm gonna jump down. Somebody writes in that they loved the A&M example for all women leadership, and the question is, have we seen any other best practices or examples for framing diversity-related posts on social media, specifically when trying to leverage authenticity and trust with your community? So, Jeremy, I have some thoughts, but let me jump to you here.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we spent some time recently on the UNC campus and the Duke campus as part of our agency as a twice-a-year innovation offsite. And I can even try to get this link out where we can just some videos about what that looked like this year, because we spent time at UNC and Duke, and at UNC we focused on creating a project that would create a platform for students to talk about issues like race and things like that. But we ended up with a platform where we tried to create in a couple of days that students could dialogue with each other. And I'll guess to kind of turn that question on it backwards a little bit and say something like that, not because we created it, but something like engaging your students to let them speak about it, I think is probably the wisest thing that you can do, because we all know the pitfalls and the ways that it can be misunderstood and those kind of things when it comes to speaking about issues like that, and you're always going to have to deal with some negative responses. But I think creating an avenue for your students, especially to talk about that, could be a really authentic way, because their understanding of what it really means is going to be much more authentic and real probably than yours is, even though you're there on campus. Let them speak. I think that could be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it a bunch of times, but continuing to try to document reality as opposed to create kind of a false reality. Like, you don't need stock. Everyone has seen the ad for the, who knows, I'm never going to name industries, has seen the ad where it's the bad stock photo where it's clearly a fake situation where you have different people of color, women. It's just too weirdly heterogeneous, and you know it's stock. And you're like, why are you pretending? Or why did you Photoshop something in? Like, we all, to varying degrees, have very diverse communities that we live in and engage with, documenting their reality, letting them tell their stories, or helping to amplify. I mean, this is the great thing. Think about, I mean, this is not a diversity example, but the Georgia Tech example where some students made a silly video of like swimming in the snow, like using your platform to amplify wonderful content, particularly when it relates to diversity on your campus, is a really good way to amplify and frankly have those students feel heard, and to have everyone in your community truly understand that diversity and success in diversity is part of your mission, and that you're living your mission. That is an absolutely fantastic way to continue to strengthen your community. Right. Don't have to make stuff up.
Right. I think when it comes from the official account, or even if it's something along the lines of like that A&M post or something that is really positive, there's always that tendency for people to respond negatively, but it takes a special kind of person, I guess, to respond negatively to someone just sharing their experience. And you've got, say, if you're a student-run account, for example, Robbie from Clemson was talking about that. He was like, during Pride Week, the president of the LGBTQ club ran their Instagram. So all those kind of things, and just showing that this is who you are, I think is really important. That'll help, and that'll show that's who you are, being authentic, showing your personality, and letting your students especially tell that story, because they're the heart of your school.
Yeah, but to mix your topic in from earlier, generally humor about race, not funny, not inclusive, not a good idea.
Cross them out.
Yeah, but we should all live by that anyway. That's not really a social media thing. Just generally, let's all live better. Next question: do you have any suggestions or specific examples about how to get alumni engaged on social media? Mm-hmm. So, in preparing and spending a lot of time talking about higher ed social media, I will tell you the place where I see alumni engagement, and it's easy to tell because if you read the comments, like, you can't tell from shares, you can't tell from likes, but go. I just use Raving Like You. Go find me a bunch of posts from higher ed that have a lot of comments, and then I just go to the platforms and read the comments. Like, it's easy to find the posts. It's easy to read. I can read, as it turns out. Thank you, higher ed. Traditions that have been happening for a long time. Mm-hmm. This could be anything. It could be university sanctioned. It could be non-university sanctioned, like something that has been a tradition on your campus for a very long time. Documenting and sharing that on social media, tons of comments, and the comments are always like this. Man, I remember in 1967 when I rolled down the big grassy hill, or I am so sad that I don't get to participate X anymore. Man, I am envious of those young kids. Whatever it is, it's usually something that drives nostalgia. It drives positive feelings, positive memories of your institution and the times that they had there. Those kinds of posts get tons of comments, and a lot of them look like that. And the interesting thing is when you start to get interactions, and go look at some of the threaded Facebook comments, you start to get interaction between the current students and the alumni talking about these things. Yep, it's not about fundraising, which is what I always feel like kind of as an alumni. Like I feel like that's my primary receiving of communication from the institutions that I attended, but it doesn't have to be. I remember lots of amazing things at Pitt as an undergraduate, as an 18, 19-year-old, that absolutely make me smile, and I'm able to think and reflect on my experience. Definitely that is what I see as well when I look through the data.
For sure, yeah, those are great. Anything that's throwbacks, traditions, success of alumni is good. Giving people an opportunity to share the areas that they're having success as well. We did a similar report actually to this one about 2 years ago that was a higher ed social media report, and it was focusing on alumni associations and ranking alumni associations that were performing well on social. So if you get a chance to go to look up this white paper, look over on the sidebar. I think it should be linked up there. If not, just search for that higher ed social report. It's got a similar title to this one, but without the engagement section. But that was all about engaging alumni. I think finding the right platform too. LinkedIn, from what I've seen, is a good platform for engaging alumni because of the stage of life that they're getting to and actually doing things for a living, which is fun.
What are you saying, Jake?
Yeah, exactly. That's stuff like LinkedIn can be helpful, creating those groups where they can interact. But I think definitely connecting back to things that will provoke good memories is awesome, and that provokes them to say, hey, I'm going to share this, and give them chances to share their voice and share their memories, ask them questions, and engaging not only on official pages but on alumni pages and alumni association groups, all those kind of things.
So a related question, the next question down is actually just the refinement. It's more specific. Have we seen good examples, or do we already know any examples or case studies that show specifically how to use social media to encourage alumni giving, which I realize is something that I just lamented. But have you worked with any clients to do that specific kind of work?
Yeah, great timing. So Clemson being the client that kind of got us into higher ed about 8 or 9 years ago. Just our CEO is a Clemson grad, and everyone was very happy when they beat Alabama. Got us into higher ed. So we worked with the Alumni Association actually with Clemson. We were excited to be a part of getting them to be ranked as the #1 most engaged alumni base in the whole country a couple years ago. That was by Princeton Review. And so we actually just recently helped them launch their first Give Day. So Clemson, having a massively engaged alumni base, just come to this town and you'll see it in action. It's just like car flags and tiger paws everywhere. They're an extremely engaged alumni base, and they're willing to give. But they, if I think I'm correct on this, that they had not done a Give Day before. It was their first ever Give Day, and so they came to us and said, hey, we've got this, we might be doing a Give Day, but they had just come off the heels of a literally $1 billion capital campaign, and Advancement was a little bit tired, and there wasn't a lot of momentum behind it, but we worked with them to help launch their first Give Day, and what we did was, here's the two things it was centered around. It was centered around teams, like well-organized, project-managed teams. So that way it wasn't just one team's effort or one office's effort. It wasn't just like, hey, annual giving, go for it, good luck, may the odds be ever in your favor. It was Advancement, it was the communication groups, and we're going to be talking more about this at Case 3. If anyone's going to be at Case 3, there'll be an opportunity to hear some more about that. But so the two things were organized teams and then social content. So what we did is we helped them organize their teams into these teams around certain things. So whether it's the logistics of the day or any of that, and they had team captains and they ran those teams in that way. And then what we helped them create, and what we created was solid social media content. So that was really shareable stuff that they could then use and have people share on social. And so simple stuff like putting these images and videos and different things in a centralized place. They actually used a content calendar tool that we built. They were able to plug in those teams so that they could make that content shareable, and they started putting that out and other people started picking it up. And so when they came to us originally and said, okay, we're doing this Give Day, I believe that was around January or December, like right before Christmas, I think it was. They said, all right, we're doing this, and it's going to be around Founders Weekend. We're like, when's that? They're like, April. So with about a 4-month prep time, they got that up and running, and through just a grassroots effort, they raised a little under $1 million. It was 900-something thousand in one day, and that was without any matching gifts or pre-planned gifts. So the two things that helped them and that we worked with them recently, which was really a lot of fun to help them get that strategy, was well-organized teams that ran the day, and it was just shareable social content and a couple really solid websites, and all about the authenticity behind like student stories and the fact that they're one Clemson and that all the people together giving made this happen. It wasn't showing the power of just one person exponentially. So that's a cool example of a Give Day.
So the question was around, how many metrics do we have around the breakdown of activity and engagement on the types of content that universities are sharing to social media? So what percentage of posts are athletics versus faculty achievement, student achievement, alumni, present students, and then the engagement that would come along with that. I think that's a fantastic idea for a next study. I have the raw data, haven't done any analysis, but I think that absolutely that would be a very compelling thing. So Mike out there, thanks for the idea, and maybe that'll be the next webinar you hear from us. I'll wrap it up here and say again, thank you. I would really appreciate being able to spend the time and frankly have so many questions. I appreciate the engagement that you all had here. I appreciate all of you who said thanks, and that was fantastic. We love being here. I like to hang out with Jeremiah. So Jeremiah, thanks for spending the time all the way from South Carolina. And
no
yeah,
it was great questions. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So look for an email from us in the next 24 hours or so with a link to the slides, link to the recording, and yeah, hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. Bye-bye.